Well, welcome in, my fellow Nebraska fans, on what was a rough start to the day. As always, I'm your post-game Nebraska coach here, Christian Hunt. I'm going to be kind of recapping this game for you. Hopefully, we can get a little bit of some different people to comment on it. Let's see here. Good news for us is we finally get to see a Nebraska win in what felt like forever. They gave us a little bit of a scare there, as going into halfway through the fourth quarter, it was a one possession game. The boys did a great job, regardless of whether it was an FCS team. They did a great job of bowing up when they had to and sort of uh, taking control of the game here. One of the big things that we wanted to see is, I think, arguably, I myself kind of thought this game was going to be long over going into the fourth quarter. It was one of those kind of things where you think, okay, we're going to get a big head start on traffic and sort of get going, and it just wasn't that. Let's look at some of the positives from it, though, of what you can sort of gather here. I think a big positive out of this game is, let's not focus on necessarily who they were playing to start this off. Let's focus on the big things, right? They down the stretch, they figured out what they do well, and that is pounding the rock. You know what I mean, with Anthony Grant, who, man, that kid is a man amongst boys out there. He did a great job in this game. Again, he had, let's see here, what the stats showing me again. He had 23 carries, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, every time they handed the ball to him, it seemed like he was just breaking tackles and just making something out of nothing. So towards the end of this game, I think they started figuring out what they needed to do, and that was they needed to pound the rock, and they started to take advantage of that, right? And they started pulling away in the fourth quarter again by just being a more physical team with them. Let's see here. Also, we'll take this time to talk about the voice of college football, who is our proud sponsor of the show. Uh, you can join them on the call-in shows at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time, just about every day of the week, right? While we're also talking about it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as that really helps the channel out. Again, this is my first time kind of going live with you guys by myself, so be sure to take it easy on me a little bit. It's not the day we certainly thought we were going to have as Nebraska fans here, right? But it's always good to come out of this with a win. I took some notes from the game, and one thing I want to kind of get into with you guys is it's very interesting. The linebacking core, who's normally led by Nick Heinrich, he didn't play today. So with Heinrich not playing, Travis Vokalek, the all-star tight end that we've got, didn't play today either. I think, both sides of the ball, as much problems as we certainly saw, I think they asked some young individuals to step up and make plays, and I certainly think they did. I certainly think they did, for sure. Let's see here. I was going to kick this over here to Zach Robinson. He said, we're in trouble. There's definitely leadership issues somewhere. Talent isn't the issue. Yeah, no, listen, I get it. Talent certainly isn't the issue, right? It's coaching. I mean, that's why you go into a one possession game going into the fourth quarter against an FCS team. You can sort of draw it when you look at Iowa. Iowa had their hands full against arguably a much better, South Dakota State team today. The only thing that saved Iowa was their defense, right? If Scott Frost and this coaching staff, if they can figure it out going forward, and they've got a chance, right? If they play like this next week against Georgia Southern, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good, right? Southern's a much more talented team. I don't want to get on that whole spiel. I don't want to focus on a lot of the negatives in this, though. I want to try to draw upon the positives, right? And that is, again, if Nebraska can simply just run the ball, right? They've tried to open it up and try to have this sexy offense where we got to throw it downfield and we got to try to distance ourselves from what, Adrian Martinez and what we used to do running the triple option. We need to sort of be a high, spread you out sort of team. Look, at the end of the day, getting cute will almost get you beat in these kind of games, right? And I think they started realizing that towards the end of the game, and that's why you started seeing them just, all right, hand it off. Let's see. Zach also says, "Yeah, I want Frost and his crew to work, but I've seen a worse team with better talent than we have had in a long time." Yeah, no, 100%. It's all about how you manage that talent for sure, Zach. I mean, it's going to be one of those things that they have to do a better job at managing the talent, and that's going to be what's going to define the Scott Frost era. They have to put these kids in or they have to put the kids in the opportunity to succeed, right? Ultimately, the coaching staff has got to do a better job at just putting them in a better spot. I mean, there was, I wanted to make sure I did this right and I kind of had everything right before we started this. So one of the big things, and we'll kind of talk about it here again, is Nebraska. They end up pulling away late to beat North Dakota. 38-17 here. Again, I would say, if we had to pass out a game MVP, it almost feels, like the one bright spot or a couple of the bright spots you can look at was Anthony Grant. Okay. He had 23 carries, 189 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Again, he did a fantastic job at, whenever they called upon him of running the football. Looking at, Casey Thompson, the quarterback of the Cornhuskers, looking to see what he could do in his second game with them. 14-21, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he had a fumble, right? And that was that big sack in the first half that sort of felt like it changed a little bit of the momentum. As far as the defense is concerned, we'll start getting into this. The defense gave up 5.3 yards per rush, and they allowed North Dakota to control the time of possession. Normally, if it's a huge blowout, you are going to let that other team's going to have the ball a lot longer. But, this didn't really feel that way. It felt like North Dakota was, they gashed them, and they had that one long run, I believe it was in the first half, to really just put that statement. It was either the first half or early in the second half where they just gashed them. And, the run defense has really, really got to step up. The one thing I will say on the defensive side of the ball, though, if we can sort of get back to that, is they did a lot better job. Finally we started seeing Garrett Nelson come back in here. I saw O'Shawn Mathis get in there doing a good job. Stephon Wynn had a great play where he ran out and they ran sort of a real quick misdirection, little play back to the other side. And Stephon Wynn, the defensive tackle, got out there and made some plays. So that's certainly a bright spot, for the team, right? Again, they're missing Nick Heinrich, who's one of the heart and souls next to Luke Reimer there in the middle of the field. So, they defensively, like I said, the problem, and here's the other problem that, feel free to kind of comment on it too. Part of the problem is they weren't able to stop them on the perimeter. Their perimeter defense, it seemed like every time they kept getting the ball out there, handing it off or bouncing it outside, the tackling out there they just couldn't tackle them. It wasn't, I don't know what you guys think about that. What do you guys certainly think? I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments section, but the tackling on the perimeter just wasn't where you would want it to be. Right. Certainly not, as you're looking to, in a couple of weeks, play, you're looking to play Oklahoma, not to skip Georgia Southern. I certainly don't want to do that. Nobody here wants to take anybody off, but you're going to have to, especially when you start stepping up to play Oklahoma and you start stepping up to play in the Big Ten, you're going to have to do a better job at making those tackles out in the open space here. Let's see here. Star Trek Asylum. One positive was Anthony Grant. Know what I'm saying? Yep. But offline, and he missed tackles are going to doom us. Oh, yes. Offensive line and missed tackles. Yep. That's just what we were talking about. The offensive line, at certain points, the pass protection didn't look all that great. Certain points, they held up really, really well. And like I said, I think it was, the run game looked a lot better, today for sure. But there was certain times where where North Dakota was getting back there and they had missed tackles as well, and Anthony Grant just really, really stepped up to put the team on his shoulders, right? Let's see here. We're going to throw this over to Jay Corey 59. I thought Nebraska in the first half looked slow and just themselves as of late. Second half, even though North Dakota started figuring some stuff out. Yeah, they definitely started off really slow. Anytime you play an FCS team like that, and you don't anytime you play an FCS team like that, and you let them kind of get in there and stick around a little bit, it normally isn't really good, right? I mean, almost saw that again today with Iowa and South Dakota State. I mean, that was I wanted to get on here and I wanted to, for the love of God, I wanted to clown Iowa and say it's a great day, right? But it's just too close to comfort. But the great thing is we pulled away and we were able to create some separation towards the end of the game and wear them down. And that's part of what these games are, right? That's when you feel like your team doesn't manage the talent the right way, doesn't put them in the right position to win. Hopefully, if you can kind of give them an opportunity to sort of make some things happen, then we can figure out how to sort of put them in the right positions to win here. Let's see here. We'll go to Stupefied, obviously an Oklahoma fan who's watching, probably doing a little bit of scouting here before, for a couple of weeks out. You got to admit, North Dakota has a hell of a talented football team. They did, and I mean you know, they played their hearts out. North Dakota did, so you always respect an opponent whenever they do that. The four-man front isn't great for us. I think go back to 3-4. We aren't big enough for 4-3. I don't think. Yeah, I know it's. I think, like you said, I think it's a part of it is the defensive scheme, but it's tough because they've got so many different, edge players out there. Caleb Tanner came in a couple times today, was making some plays from that edge spot. So they're trying to sort of get, this rotation of edge guys in there to play. And that's where the problem is, right? They go out and they get Stephon Wynn, they get Drew, they get some of these guys, they've got Colton Feist, up in the middle. They've got, Ty Robinson up there. They're trying. There's so many guys up on that defensive line that they're trying to get sort of in there, and they're also trying to sort of hide up some of the depth problems, at linebacker, because outside of Heinrich and Reimer, it's very young, very inexperienced. I think, like I said, I think it's just one of those things where you could be right, Zach. I think they're going to have to maybe look at changing the scheme up, maybe even looking at doing I don't know, a 5-2 or something like that. The only problem when you run to a 5-2 is if you start getting to some of these teams like Oklahoma or some teams that can spread you out and throw the ball, it really creates a mismatch in that sort of, in that aspect, right? You would think when you run, four down linemen, you're going to be able to plug gaps and have, your three backers back there being able to sort of plug and play. I think part of the problem too is they don't have a true number, they don't have a true third backer back there. It's a nickel or a dime sort of defensive back, or it's a sort of edge linebacker who just sort of gets lost in space. I think that's part of the problem also with it. I don't know. Keep telling me what you think down there below. Let's see. Jack the Ripper, they beat a FCS team that was 5-6 last year with a 12,000 stadium at home by basically 2 touchdowns the second week of the season. Oklahoma is going to kill Nebraska based off this week. Well, that's why you play the games, right? I certainly think Nebraska is one of those teams that they play up or down to the competition. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised, and we saw this last year, right? I really, really wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game again next week. They pull ahead late and obviously prove they're the more talented team against Georgia Southern. They play Oklahoma really, really close with the first-year coach and Brent Venables. And then you start getting into Big Ten play. And I'll be honest, I mean, this weekend, you want to see some separation in the Big Ten, and I just haven't seen it, that much. You look at it goes back to Penn State and Purdue. That was a very close game. You'd want to see somebody pull away there. Michigan State barely beat, who was it, Western Michigan, I believe. They didn't barely beat them, but you know what I mean? They didn't beat them by as much as what people thought they were going to beat them by. Who else was it that played pretty close? Illinois and Indiana. Indiana eked out a victory against Illinois. Rutgers beat Boston College today. Now, granted, Boston College isn't what they've been in the past, but I mean, the Big Ten right now is really up for grabs. I mean, it's if Scott Frost and Nebraska if they can just kind of keep themselves if they can really just keep themselves in this thing, right, and just take it one game at a time. Let's get through Southern next week. Let's try to beat, Oklahoma, and I think we can beat Oklahoma. I think Nebraska, like I said, if they can figure the coaching and the talent out, like I said, it's not figuring the talent part of it. It's how to manage that talent, right? That's the key thing there. If they can do that, eliminate special teams mistakes and allowing special teams to really dictate games, I think they'll be fine going into the Oklahoma game. They'll have a chance, like I said, right? They'll certainly have a chance. What are you guys thinking again here? Let's jump in back into the comments and see some more of what you guys think. Let's see here. Somebody says here we'll go to Wade Farr. Thompson needs to stop telegraphing his throws. Yeah, I think that's certainly part of it. I mean, again, looking at the game, I mean, he's not really. He kind of got thrown off a little bit earlier in the game. In the first half, they were able to kind of get back there and get to him, and so obviously, when you play quarterback, you're not really sure what you're going to be doing and how that's going to affect you. So I think that's kind of part of the problem. He got his timing sort of thrown off a little bit in the first half. They weren't really moving the ball at certain points when they needed to. Drives were stalling out. Just little things were going against him. And yeah, I can see what you're saying. The telegraphing of his throws, uh, that kind of came back where that Mike linebacker for North Dakota ended up, pretty much just picking him right off. It was just boom. And that's the other part of it too. I don't know if you necessarily saw him either. I mean, it was when you looked at it. I mean, it was literally right to him. So I'm going to say this here, Steve Needham. At this point, a win is a win. A long way to go, but one step at a time. Maybe, just maybe, if we all show support, we can get on a roll. Positivity. I agree with you. Again, I don't disagree with you, right? Sometimes, I try to be realistic with things, right? Uh, I really try to be, I try to be realistic with things, right? It's one of those things I just can't. Sometimes it's so difficult, right? Because I try to be, like I said, not overly positive, but not overly negative. So I try to sort of fill that void, right? That's my big thing with it. But I think you're right. I think you got to sort of take some positivity away from this. You got to drink a little bit of Kool-Aid from a game like this because, hey, look, if it was, it can't be all that negative. Granted, again, it was an FCS team, but they still pulled the victory out, right? And that's what you wanted to see. You wanted to see, can Scott Frost finally pull a victory out, in a one-score game, and they did that, right? And that's what they've been talking about, kind of going forward here. Here's an interesting one I want to get to. Craig Casper. Why aren't any of the running backs that were last year, or pretty much that were leading the team last year, getting touches? Irvin got one, and Ramir got frozen out for the second week in a row. Yeah, Craig, I think I literally, like I said, I took I took some more pages of notes and everything like that. Excuse the handwriting. Got the doctor handwriting here. That's one of the things I wrote down here. Let me see where I wrote it. I literally wrote it right here. I said, Anthony Grant is their best running back on the team right now, from what we've seen through 2 weeks. And Gabe, Ramir Johnson and Gabe Irvin, where are they? By the time I wrote that, literally a couple plays later in the second half, that's when, Gabe Irvin got trotted out. I think Ramir Johnson, from what I've been told, has been hurt and banged up. But still, and maybe you guys can tell me, from what I was thinking, the pecking order for the running backs was going to be, Johnson, Irvin, Yant, Grant, and that's kind of how I thought the order is. But from what I've seen in this game, it looks like it's Grant, and then let's see, was AJ Allen? Yeah, AJ Allen out there, right? And I mean, even AJ Allen, he did an okay job in this game. He had 11 touches, 58 yards. He had a touchdown. A lot of that was in sort of mop up duty towards the end of the game. Gabe Irvin, like you said, he had a big drop. I know that in the past game, he had that one big drop. He had one touch, -1 yards. And sometimes it's just they didn't want to feed. Sometimes they were trying to feed the hot hand in this game, and I think they were just trying to avoid the upset. Certainly with that. Chad Shepard down here below says Gabe Irvin will get his carries. I could see it. Like I said, it's a long season. They're going to have to start running the ball. They're going to have to rely on that run game a lot more, and they're going to have to start sort of dishing and dime the ball down to their running backs. Like I said, I don't think we need to start going to Paul Johnson, Georgia Tech triple option days here, by any stretch of the imagination. I will say this: I want to open this up to you guys watching, in the comments section. Nebraska did sort of jump back out there, and they did sort of run a package where they ran the triple option with Casey Thompson. What about maybe incorporating? And I saw this too. Down here below with Wade Farr, he's talking about Logan Smothers. Why not use Logan Smothers like North Dakota did with their 2 QBs, and they did that a few times. But let me ask you guys this: what if Nebraska started trotting Smothers out there and they did run a little bit more triple option, trying to throw them off a little bit? And I don't know, maybe that could be sort of a wrinkle or a package that they're trying to get going. For sure. I think that could certainly be something. Part of it almost feels like they're on purpose. I know it's going to sound, probably not the brightest thing I've said, but it sounds to me like they're trying to sort of hide the game plan going into, Oklahoma. They don't want, the season pretty much comes to the Oklahoma game, right? Because of that buyout looming after that. I think that's kind of what I feel like. And that's just the realistic side of it, right? I think from a positivity standpoint, again, you're able to come in here, you get a win, you pull away, you create that separation that you want. It wasn't a one possession win, so that's at least good, right? They come in and they win 38-17, and in the fourth quarter they really figured some stuff out. Now going forward, you can't do that. Okay, again, you cannot sort of jump into these games and do that, right? Because you're going to be playing a lot better teams compared to North Dakota and the Fighting Hawks. Let's see here. Chad Shepard, he also says, yet another comment here. He says, I think the O-line got better as the game went on. Yeah, I certainly think so too. Probably the one thing, and I wrote this down too here, was, part of it is, they had some penalties, in certain, I think, second and third downs that were pretty big, for false starts and everything like that. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I think they definitely got better as the game went on, and especially in the run game, they started really doing a lot better job at pretty much going downhill and putting a man on a man. In the first half, it seemed like they were letting a lot of guys through, and it was just they were getting stuffed in the backfield. And North Dakota, they didn't do a great job at tackling, and I think part of that's just because Anthony Grant is a beast. He's a bell cow back there, and I'm 6'2", 290, right? I'd like to think I'm a big old guy, right? But I would struggle to tackle that guy, right? I don't think I would be able to tackle him. To be fair with you, right? Probably tear an ACL running on the field. But yeah, North Dakota did a good job, though, I'll say this, at gang tackling, as the game went on, and Nebraska just did a better job at wearing them down as the game went on, right? Let's see here. NCAA playoff. Well, where is Chubba? That's a great question. Right now, from what we've seen in the first couple of games, it looks like Chubba Purdy has been nowhere to be seen, right? It's the only 2 quarterbacks that I've seen, and I'm sure you guys will say the same thing, has been Casey Thompson and then Logan Smothers. But I think part of the reason why they're trying to do that is, Smothers' athleticism is, it's that next level, right? Smothers' athleticism is in that, that next level that you kind of want, right? And that kind of brings up a great point here, by Zach Robinson again. He said, I wonder why they don't use Smothers as a back sometimes. Dude is as athletic as hell, plus he could throw some wrinkles in it. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly go in there and, as a back, and I'm assuming he's probably meaning like a running back. Yeah, you could absolutely do that, kind of like North Dakota did. Their quarterback, like I said, I mean, he kind of did certain things in the game, kind of gave that interesting wrinkle. I think Smothers could definitely come in and sort of do some sort of Julian Edelman like roles, right? You remember, he played, I think Edelman played at Kent State as a wide receiver, or as a quarterback. Then he got drafted as a wide receiver. If you could do some of those things, some quick screen pass, double passes with Smothers, that would be great. I don't know if you'd really want to do that against your FCS opponents. Like you said, getting him involved in some ways would definitely be a lot better here. Let's go over here to Eric Green. We need to get back to the old style, run the ball and mix in some pass and quarterback keepers. I definitely agree with you, right? I think Casey Thompson is, the easy comparison would be to say he's a less athletic version of Adrian Martinez, right? But he's got a better arm, no questions about that. He's accurate as all get out. There was certain times in, when Adrian Martinez was playing, it was really tough with his with his arm out there, right? And when the game started coming down to that, it was really difficult. I think we're in a lot better position with Casey Thompson. I think, and I'll say this, and then I'm going to kind of circle back to answering that. I think it's one of those things where it's really difficult, for Casey Thompson, um, just because he's going to have to try to sort of do certain things, right? Like he doesn't want to get hurt, almost is what it looks like when I see him. He just wants to hand the ball off, and every once in a while he'll keep it. He'll keep it up there, but he's got sort of like a point guard, or like in basketball, you know what I mean? Where some certain times, certain basketball players, they have those tendencies to get hot or cold, just depending on the game. And I could almost see that, where he just kind of goes like, he'll be super accurate, boom, 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 boom. And then he kind of starts dropping off. But in this game, what I saw was, and we'll kind of jump back over here for a second, but what I saw in the game was, he was 14 to 21. So he only missed on really 7 passes. So he was pretty accurate for the most part. One of those misses was an interception. I don't think he really got a chance to throw on that fumble, obviously, but he did okay. I mean, for what he was trying to do, I think he did okay. Let's see here, getting back into that comment, and we were talking a little bit here about, about the run game. I think that's, again, trying to get back to the old style run, and trying to mix in a little bit of the quarterback keeper as well. Again, it goes back to me, it really goes back to the Northwestern game. If you stop for a little bit and think about it, right? Like what Northwestern did, what the Nebraska run game did last week against Northwestern was certainly interesting, right? Because Anthony Grant had 101 yards, but 46 of which came on one gain, right? They did a good job at sort of stepping up and bottling them. Now in this game, as the game wore on, they started wearing them down a lot more. So I just think, like I said, I think it's one of those things where you're right. They're going to have to try to figure out a way to be creative, but not get too cute at the same time, right? Because I feel like that's what's sort of happened in the past is they've tried to get, too cute. And it's sort of it's a blend of two different offensive concepts, right? Part of it is, Scott Frost and the offense he wants to run. And the other part of it is Whipple and the offense he wants to run. They're trying to sort of marry both of them, right? And Frost is more zone run, stretch the ball out, horizontally, whereas Whipple's more, I want to throw it down the field vertically and utilize some of those guys like Trey Palmer and the big tight ends and all that stuff, right? He wants to push the ball vertically, but when you want to push, and I've said this, right? If you are going to try to push the ball vertically in a Mark Whipple offense, you have got to be able to run the ball. Last year in that Pitt offense, Whipple, I think they had 3 running backs that had north of like 500 yards. So they had running attack that had like 1,500 yards. And that's part of what they were able to do, right? They got to do that again this year. They can't just have Anthony Grant be the only guy running the ball, right? Let's jump into some more of these comments here, though. Let's see here. After seeing 2 games, what's your opinion of Raiola coaching the O-line at this point? It's still, I think the jury's still out. NCAA playoff. I think the jury is still out on, Raiola. Here's the reality of it, right? I haven't seen anybody throw up yet, throughout this point. No, just kidding. But it would be interesting if we did see somebody throwing up on the sidelines. I think, my takeaway on on Raiola is this, going into this year, and you go and you look at, his coaching, sort of where he coached at, right, before this. I believe he coached at a very small college. He got the job as the O-line coach there, right? Played in the NFL for a long time. got promoted up to be one of the Bears' assistant offensive line coaches, right? The one thing I can tell you, and again, this isn't me trying to be negative. This isn't me trying to bag on him. I think he's doing a good job with what he's had. I mean, because a lot of the question marks coming into this season certainly was surrounding the offensive line. Um, Rayola, is I think he's doing a pretty good job. I mean, to me, as far as coaching and everything like that is concerned, I'll say this: I think that they absolutely you have to buy him a little bit of time, right? If we can buy Scott Frost and Mark Whipple a time, and they can do enough this year to sort of keep things moving, right? This is going to be, I'm telling you right now, you get Mark Whipple, Casey Thompson back next year. You bring back some of these weapons and Trey Palmer and some of these other guys. This can be a special offense. But the key to that is you have to do just enough. Like you said, Rayola and the O line, they got to do just enough to keep Thompson and them sort of pounding. You got to keep a rotation of back sort of running downhill, and you got to do that, right? I think through 2 games, it's no secret the offense is going to have to carry this team. The offense is going to have to carry this team, and they're going to have to figure out a way to stop the run. If you can figure out a way to stop the run, and that may be an impossible task to ask, if you can figure that out and have the offense carry you, then we're going to be in for, we're going to upset a lot. We're probably going to upset some teams, and we're going to win a lot of games this year if we can do that, right? The season's not over yet by any stretch of the imagination. Like most of you guys, I think I got a little excited towards the end of the last game. You know what I mean? Not excited so much as it was, in the moment. I got caught up in the moment, and sort of after taking some time back, I don't think the season's over at all. I think that, we have to come out and we have to beat Georgia Southern, this next week, and we have to learn from this game, and we have to figure out why did we start off slow? What was the problems that sort of were affecting us? And then, yeah, I think we'll be able to kind of keep it pushing and keep it moving going into Oklahoma. Let's see here. Does Smothers think like McCaffrey and it's QB or nothing? Wish someone would tell him truth that Nebraska not interested in him as front quarterback, throw third back up, but never going to be full-time starter. That's by Wade Farr. Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, I don't know. Like Logan Smothers he's their number 2 guy, and I mean, he was a freshman last year, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got some time, right? He's certainly still got some time back there. The McCaffrey thing, McCaffrey is certainly an interesting dynamic at quarterback. He was a great athlete, but I mean, that's really for me what he was. I mean, a guy like McCaffrey, you need him to sort of stick around for 4 years, develop him, and that just didn't happen. So, interestingly enough, right? XRP liquidity. Without a dominant run game, Nebraska will never be a consistent winner. Yeah, I mean, 100%. Based off what we've seen this far, they want to push the ball down the field vertically, and if they can't run the ball, then as a defense, I can start walking. I can start getting funky with some different blitzes, and yeah, I can start really affecting that. Right? Let's see here. Don Dre, Nebraska had a lot to overcome this week, and they did. Yeah, certainly. They're coming back from Ireland, and it's tough. I mean, I'll say this, right? This is certainly one of those things that is not easy, right? Because I lived in Europe for 3 years, and I can tell you right now, when you're switching back and forth, flying back and forth from the States and traveling throughout different places and different time zones, it's not easy. Jumping between, Lincoln, Nebraska, Dublin, Ireland, and flying back, and then you got to play a week later, right? It certainly isn't easy trying to do that. So, yeah, they did have a lot to overcome this week. As far as, it's a heartbreaking loss on the road to Northwestern to start the season off. And there's a lot of it, right? It plays on your psyche, right? When you've been told, hey, there's all these question marks surrounding the team, the coaching, this, to that. You know what I mean? It's sort of a pressure cooker environment right now with the program. It's tough, man. It is tough. And I feel bad for them at certain points. I really do, but I'm proud of them. I'm really, really proud of them that they were able to come in today and they fought hard. You know what I mean? It's not like they didn't just, they wanted to let this happen, but they fought really hard and they came away with the victory, right? And at the end of the day, you're 1-1. You're back to 500. You're back to the season being in control, right? And, we gotta just take it one game at a time. So we're gonna enjoy the victory tonight, and tomorrow the clock resets on it, right? And we get back to work. Let's see here. NCAA playoff said the irony of McCaffrey leaving is that he's a wideout at Rice now and not a quarterback. Well, certainly. I mean, he was a better athlete than he was a quarterback, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about there. He was sort of a project at quarterback, right? He needed some time to sort of develop. I think Smothers, what he did really great last year, against Iowa. I mean, he came in and was able to lead the team as a freshman, right? And he's a good project quarterback as well. You got to give him some snaps, right? You have to give him some snaps, because the worst thing that could happen is, Logan Smothers transfers, Chubba Purdy decides to transfer, and now there's no clear cut winner back there at the backup quarterback spot, right? I would say that's sort of could be the worst case scenario for the team, right? So keep commenting, guys. Keep it up. Like I said, what are you guys' thoughts as we turn the page, towards Georgia Southern? I mean, what do you guys want to see Nebraska change, do better, keep doing as we start getting into the Georgia Southern game? Let's see here. Star Trek Asylum says McCaffrey and Spillman really screwed up transferring. Yeah, and it happens. And that definitely happens, man. I mean, it's hard. It's if you can always go back and have that crystal ball. Uh, it sucks. But I'll tell you who didn't. Wandell Robinson, right? Wandell Robinson was another guy that was an electric playmaker for the Cornhuskers who transferred to Kentucky, and that worked out for him, right? Sometimes it certainly doesn't work out for him. Sometimes it does. It's always a gamble for sure. Let's see here. Kyle McGrew. It's crazy that we're recruiting so well, but our record doesn't show. Nebraska just needs to take one day at a time, build the confidence, and one win at a time. Exactly. Exactly. That's what and I just talked about it. It's easy to start, looking ahead to Oklahoma, and that's the game, and that's the key to what is going to happen going forward, right? This week, as we have Georgia Southern coming to Lincoln, it's going to be a night game, so that's going to be that's going to be a pretty interesting matchup, right, between them and Georgia Southern. I I think, like I said, this has all the makings of if they come out and play the same way they did today, could be a trap game, right? I don't think they lose it. Okay. I don't think they lose the game. I think they're going to win it, but they have to come in focused. They have to settle down 1-1. Let's take it week by week, and let's come out and beat Georgia Southern, right? Let's see. Let's keep getting some more thoughts in here of what you guys think Nebraska needs to do going forward, and we'll probably have a little bit more time. Then we'll probably go ahead and wrap the show up here. Here we go. Chad Shepard. I want to see the quarterback run game still in the offense. It helps with the numbers game. I think Nebraska can still go 8-4. 100%. 100%. You have to. I mean, if they can start keying, as far as if they can come in and they can start keying it, right? And they start keying down inside and biting down and, walking guys into the box, and you start hitting them with that little, read option game and running the ball or doing whatever you want to do like that, right? It's just another wrinkle that you're going to be able to throw out to other teams there, and Chad said it exactly right. You got to be able to run the ball. But you also have to be able to mix it well, right? It's so hard sometimes to find a great quarterback that can throw the ball really well, who can also run it, right? That's the key. It feels like guys are, he's either a really dynamic athlete, he can go out and he can run the ball really well, but his passing's a little or, he can throw the ball really well, but he just doesn't make those elite runs, right? You just want to see somebody that can do just enough in the run game to get you probably 5-7 yards when you need it, and be able to throw the ball downfield. I mean, that without having to worry about turnovers, right? That's the big thing, right? Let's see here. We're going to jump it back to Wade Farr. Fix letting teams run right through the middle next week. 100%. Absolutely. We said that at the top of the broadcast. Wade, you got to be able to stop letting guys run the football on you. I don't have the numbers right in front of me for what Northwestern did last week, but it was a lot. In this game, again, Let's see, I have it pulled up over here. They gave up 175 rushing yards. Nebraska did towards North Dakota. And the eye-popping stat of that, by the way, was the 5.3 yards per carry, right? That's what we can't have happen. As you know, it was, and I'll say this, I mean, it's tough to really predict what North Dakota wanted to do today, from their offensive style. What they did, they were able to sort of mix it up a lot, right? They threw the ball 37 times and they ran it 33 times. They were pretty balanced, right? So that's really difficult. We're going to be playing Georgia Southern next week, and I think that's a matchup that should be a little bit better for us. From all intents and purposes, Georgia Southern, they went out and got Western Kentucky's offensive coordinator, from last year. Now, Western Kentucky ranked number 2 in the country as far as total offense was concerned. They went out and they got a quarterback from Buffalo who transferred in, who is going to be their starter. All signs point towards they're going to try to throw the ball. They're going to try to drop back and throw the ball. So O'Shawn Mathis, Caleb Tanner, Garrett Nelson, Stephon Wynn, those guys up front can all sort of, pin their ears back and feast, right? The one thing you certainly don't want to have happen going into the Southern game is all of a sudden Matt Breida comes back to Georgia Southern and they just start running the ball again, right? That's the one thing you don't want to have happen. So hopefully, but you also got to play. You also have to play, pass coverage too. I mean, it was very early in the game, and just like in the Northwestern game, there was a guy wide open. I mean, streaking right across the field. It was almost the same play, and their quarterback, North Dakota's quarterback, he was getting pressured a little bit. He just missed him. He missed it. It's one of those things where I played quarterback before, and sometimes you see a guy wide open, and you don't know what to do. You get excited, and then your release point, is all over the place, right? And so, man, it's tough, right? So they're going to have to definitely, put the clamps down in their secondary as well. Let's see here. We're going to go back to Star Trek. I think I'm saying that right. I keep saying Asylum. Is that Elysium? Well, you know what it is. That's the most important part. After watching today and also seeing Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana play, it's kind of scary. I think we can. Let's see. I think we can play them, but their offenses are well polished, like Notre Dame. But with that D1 10. Okay, I see what you're saying. North Dakota, not Notre Dame. Habits. Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying there, Star Trek. I think it's. Yeah, Illinois, Purdue, and Indiana. I mean, their offenses are good, but again, it all goes back to Nebraska. Nebraska is one of those teams, and I think we all know it. They play up or down to whoever they play. They're a team that will go in and they'll play Ohio State really close, and it'll be a 1 or 2 possession game. Or they'll play Michigan, who goes on to go to the college football playoff last year, and it's a field goal game. And then they jump into games like this, you know what I mean, or Northwestern, or Rutgers, or whoever, right? And it's a really close game. So, let's see here. Let's see. NCAA playoff, watching Purdue, Penn State, and Illinois, Indiana. The Big Ten West looks like it's going to be a lot more challenging this year. Will Nebraska be able to get 6+ wins this year? I certainly hope so. Listen, I don't want to be negative or anything like that, but again, all this year, and this starts setting up the bigger picture here. I don't know what the numbers got to be, for Scott Frost this year. I know they talked about it internally. I don't want to put the number out there. I feel like that's kind of unfair to him almost, right? It's, to me, when I look at this, my season projections, I think they're going to win. I had them going 7-5, right? That was where I kind of pegged them at. I think they can certainly still get there. They're going to have to probably win 6+ games this year for Scott Frost to keep his jobs. I mean, honestly. So that's the number I would imagine. Like you said, Purdue, Penn State, Illinois, Indiana, they're all going to be tough outs. But again, I mean, the defense, they just need one game. They just need that one game, and Southern could certainly be that game for them. I mean, Clay Helton, unless he turns into the reverse Scott Frost, he wasn't that great of a coach at USC, right? So he's, like I said, if he comes to a smaller school in the South and all of a sudden gets hot, and outperforms expectations, then then great, right? But I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen in year one. So the advantage to me even from a coaching standpoint, goes to Scott Frost, right? So I think this next game, Georgia Southern, could be the launching point for the team, where you start to get a little bit of confidence as far as tackling is concerned. When you start getting a lot more confidence in the pass rush game, and I see what they're trying to do on offense too. I mean, they're trying to get Casey Thompson going early, and I kind of liken it back to when Cam Newton was at Auburn, right? When Cam Newton was at Auburn, they talked about in the smaller games, the FCS games, they wanted to throw the ball a lot. They wanted to get him on the same page as the wide receivers when he transferred in his first year, right? And that's exactly what what got them going that year and sparked that magical run for Auburn back in the day. And this is kind of what I feel like they're trying to do with Casey Thompson, right? They don't want to run the ball, they don't want to run the ball 40 times a game. They want to be able to drop back and throw the ball at will on teams. And that starts by, you got to be able to drop back and throw it. And that starts in these FCS games that we're playing, like against North Dakota. That's part of it, right? Let's see here. Thomas Springhauer here says, I think it's the line on both sides of the ball. Their O-line was pushing our D-line around in reference as to what needs to get fixed. Yeah, I mean, their O-line was pushing our D-line around. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, and I said this again, it's certainly always easier to run block as opposed to pass block, right? I guarantee you if North Dakota's game plan in this game would have been to drop back and throw it 50, 60 times, it would have been a lot uglier game, but it wasn't. They did a really good job. And I think part of that was they did a good job at sort of mixing it up. So did Northwestern last week. It's tough when you play somebody who they're going to run it and they're going to throw it, right? An equal amount of times in a game, right? Like I said, the statistics on that, they dropped back 37 times. They ran it 33 times, right? They were pretty much symmetrical as far as what they wanted to do in their game plan. It's tough to stop that because you don't know what's coming, right? Especially you start getting into those second and mid-range, third and shorts. I mean, you can do really whatever you want. And so you kind of have to, sort of expect anything here, right? Let's see here. Chad Shepard, he said, I think Thompson is going to have some big numbers passing. I think so too. I think that, I like I said, he is an accurate son of a gun, man. He's got that pinpoint accuracy that you just can't teach. I mean, the thing to me is, and I wrote this down. Let's see here. I wrote it somewhere down here, right? Oh yeah, I wrote it down right here. You can kind of see it. There's a whole lot of chicken scratch. Sorry. But one of the things I wrote down was Casey Thompson. He's deadly accurate, and if you give him some weapons and you give him time, kid can be elite. I mean, he can, and that's the big thing, right? And that's why it's so important. If you can get Whipple back and him back for a second year together, elite offense. I mean, all the problems should start to dissipate, right? Let's see here. We can do this. Eric Green says we can do this. You're right. Confidence is the key. Yeah, it is. 100% it is. There's looking around college football today, Oregon, which was the number 11 team in the country, got smacked down by the Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, that with a first-year coach and everything kind of going on, that could be a program-defining loss for them, right? This is it's a building block game, right? And then you go into the Georgia Southern game. There's some things that should match up well for us. And I think that, like I said, you just get into that game, you stop the run game, you sort of get back and you start playing better on defense, and that starts up front, right? You start playing better up front on defense, and you start getting Casey Thompson sort of going. You call the right game plan, right? Here's what I think, right? They're waiting too long. They're waiting too long to start trying to get these bell cow running backs going. Start pounding them early, like you guys were saying in the comment section. Start throwing some play action in there. Start playing. They did it against Northwestern early in that game. They got down to the goal line. Casey Thompson ran it in. Start doing some things like that. That's the big thing that you got to see from them, right? It's not you got to do all this other stuff here, right? It's just let's get them to the point where we're playing chess, not checkers, right? When we're playing chess, hey, we're running the ball early in the first half, and we're we're just absolutely wearing teams down in the first half. Once you start seeing them start walking guys down, inside that box, safeties, defensive backs inside that box, man, that's when we start playing it vertically, right? And then you're cooking. I mean, who can stop you at that point with the athletes that we have? I mean, pretty much there's not a whole lot of other teams as long as you can hold up on defense. I mean, nobody, right? Let's see here. Wade Farr says, why did Frost do squib kick, onside long kick? Thought they would never do anything close to that type of kick after all the backlash last week. Ma'am, that was certainly an interesting call there. I don't think he could necessarily do the onside kick. So he said, well, we're going to try to, find something there. Right. And we'll see what we can kind of do. They kind of gave him the field position there. And it was just one of those sort of decisions where I think on special teams, he tried to get cute. He tried to look for a mismatch. And, I don't think it was necessarily there. It's tough. It's really tough. It almost seems, I don't know, as far as the kicking team goes, they got a new special teams coach this year. And it seems like Scott Frost is calling a lot more of these plays. I don't know if he said something. Maybe you guys can sort of tell me whether he is calling this stuff or not. I know he definitely called that onside kick. He sort of did that. I don't know if he had anything to do with this. It may not have been him, right? He may not have certainly been the one to say that. But yeah, I mean, there was some other things too in this game where special teams kind of had me a little concerned. And by that, I mean, I was really concerned about the missed field goal there. It looked like North Dakota was getting through on those field goal attempts. The other thing I would say is, the other thing I was going to say about that too is, it was that gunner on the punt return very early in the game where he reached. I don't know if you guys saw this. Tell me if you saw it or not. I almost lost my mind. Where clearly you don't have to touch it. And, you're going to get the ball. Don't worry about it. Just don't touch it, right? Even if North Dakota touches the ball, the play's dead. I mean, it's dead. They can't do anything. The ball's down there, right there, right? Why do you try to go pick that up? I don't get it. It's one of those things where you're like, God, man, can we just have a clean game on special teams? That's all I'm asking, right? Let's see here. Kyle McGrew says, by what year can you guess we will start getting 5-star talent within 5 years? I think so. Part of it is with 5 stars. They just want to know that they're going to be put in the right position. You know what I mean? They're going to be in a position where they can come in and they can play. And a lot of times, you're going to have to, like a team like Nebraska, it's a power, it's one of the blue bloods of college football. They're going to have to do a better job at the talent they've got. They've actually, believe it or not, recruited the 24th best recruiting class in the country since Scott Frost has been there, right? They just have to do a better job at managing that talent. I mean, if you start getting some 8-9 win seasons in there, and man, the 5 stars are going to start coming back. That's what you have to do, right? You're going to have to win some games, start winning 8-9 games, especially with the college football playoff, by the way, expanding to 12 teams, right? That's going to hopefully start spreading this around a little bit more, right? Now, obviously, we got to get back up into the top 12 to get there. You're probably going to have to be number 2 or number 3, arguably in the Big Ten to see that. But they're going to have to do a better job at sort of managing the talent they have. They can't let these guys transfer out. They've got to be able to do really well with the 4 stars. And O'Shawn Mathis, Garrett Nelson, some of these guys that they've got here, or Casey Thompson is a great example of this. Trey Palmer. They have to do a really good job at managing them. And they're doing that, right? I mean, I think in the first couple games, Trey Palmer they've been feeding that guy. I mean, they've just been feeding him, on offense, especially with Travis Vokalek getting hurt, in that first game. I mean, his backup, by the way, he had a drop early in the game and he came back and redeemed himself throughout it. So he did a good job at that. I'd say they have to do a good job at managing the talent, right? I would say my guess is, if we can sort of redeem ourselves, get back to 7-8 wins this year, which I think is still in the realm of possibilities, the recruiting is going to do a lot better, right? I think we'll probably get 1 or 2 5 stars this year. Eric Green, going to take probably a couple more comments after this, and we're going to go ahead and sign off. Eric Green said yes, and we have 6'2" wide receiver, and they can't double team everybody, and Palmer across the middle. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can't, you can't double team the wide receivers, right? It's there's just so much talent that Nebraska has, and they're starting to get them on the field, right? Omar Manning, and this to me was another thing that sort of hurt Nebraska in the Northwestern game. Omar Manning was banged up; he didn't play in that game, right? And to me, that's kind of what I talked about. Where I don't know how early on that was. I don't know if it was a week of, day of, whatever decision where he got banged up. But Omar Manning, Alante Brown, those guys have got to step up, and you got to get them sort of going alongside of Trey Palmer with the loss of Travis Vokalek, right? And hopefully Vokalek can get back in here before the Oklahoma game. That's going to be the real big time where we're going to need him, right? Because you need to get him and Casey Thompson back on the same page. And it almost seemed like they were, like in the first game against Northwestern. I mean, they were coming together. I mean, they were just meshing beautifully, right? And when he got hurt, that sort of seemed to disrupt the offense a lot. Let's see what else we've got here, guys. Let's see. Again, this is the Nebraska postgame show, sponsored by the Voice of College Football. As always, I am your host, Christian Hunt. Just talking a little bit of shop here, right? Just talking a little bit of shop here. As our Cornhuskers, won a game again finally, right? 38-17. They beat North Dakota. And, it wasn't pretty, but they got it done. Kind of like I always like to say, it's one of those things where, I don't know what you guys think. I would probably imagine not too much celebrating going on tonight when you beat a team like North Dakota, but you still take the positives from it. You celebrate, or you feel good about it for, tonight, and then you wake up tomorrow and we're on to Southern, right? We're on to Southern, and that's what we need to do, right? We need to get on to Southern. We need to get ready to play them, and that's not going to always be an easy game, as this game proved. But hopefully we go out there this next week and we play Georgia Southern and we absolutely blow them out of the water, right? Let's see here, Wade Farr, and this is another good question here. This is what I thought. Why do we play so much zone? The few times we played man, they didn't get very far compared to zone. You're 100% right. 100% right. A lot of the times that I've seen Nebraska give up big plays in this game, and that may play into part of the run game, right? Is, when you're soft up front, you're not sort of playing that man concept, right? And they get through the defensive line, boom, right? On your opponent's run game, as far as the as far as the passing game is concerned, you're right, because it seemed like there was a lot of plays where, not particularly in this game so much, just because I feel like North Dakota didn't have as much time to throw the ball and they weren't trying some things. But I felt like in the game against Northwestern, you're right, when they were running zone, I mean, Helinski was just sitting back and just picking them. And it was tough. And you're right. They need to step up. And that's the thing, man. They have the talent to step up and play that sort of that man scheme, right? To me, and I think this is part of what goes into why they play so much man, is it may be some of those missed tackles out there on the perimeter that we see a lot of. That may be why they're electing to sort of call some more of those sort of zone schemes. I don't know, right? We're gonna take this comment, maybe one more after this, and we're gonna go ahead and jump off here though. Vince Watson. In post-game press conference, Frost declined to answer who called plays in the first half and who called plays in the second half. So that's kind of what I had said, right? Going back to last game, it felt like they're sort of doing this weird thing where they're like, okay, you're going to call plays in the first half, I'm going to call plays in the second half. You go out and you get a guy like Mark Whipple, you got to let him call plays, right? I mean, you just got to let him call the plays. I mean, come on, man. It's one of those things that it's frustrating as a fan base, right? You go out, you get excited about Mark Whipple, you bring him in, you have, he's got the electric offenses that he had at Pitt, last year, and you just, your ego gets in the way and you can't let him call the plays. And that's frustrating. That is really, really frustrating. All right, guys. Well, this is Christian Hunt here with the Nebraska football postgame, sponsored by the Voice of College Football. We've just reached the 1 hour mark, and I think with that, we're starting to see some people sort of dissipate here. Be sure to watch this video back, leave any comments, and we'll get back to them here. But I think we're going to go ahead and sign out. As always, GBR, hard fought victory today, and I look to see you guys back here again next Saturday.